There is a number almost no Australian ever looks up, and it changes everything about when you should stop working. A man born in Australia today can expect to live to about 81, a woman about 85. Those are the figures everyone repeats. But there is a second number sitting underneath them, and it hardly ever gets talked about. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare tracks something called health adjusted life expectancy. It measures the years you can expect to live in good health before illness or injury starts shaping your days. For men, that number is roughly 71.7 years. For women, roughly 73.8. Sit with that for a moment. The gap between how long you live and how long you live well runs somewhere between 9 and 11 years. Those later years still matter, they just look different. There is more time in waiting rooms and less time on walking tracks, on planes, on the floor with grandkids who want you to chase them. Now put that beside the way most Australians plan. You can reach your super at 60 if you were born after the 1st of July 1964. The age pension starts at 67. Plenty of people work well past both. They tell themselves that one more year of full pay makes everything safer. That extra year does add money to the balance. It also comes out of the healthiest years you have left, and those years cannot be bought back at any price. That is the first reason to finish work as early as your numbers allow. The trade is uneven. You are giving up your best years, the ones where your knees still work and your energy holds up past lunch, for years that will come with a different set of limits. Something else is worth saying here. Plenty of Australians never get to choose their finish date at all. A health problem, a redundancy, or caring for a partner ends up making the choice for them. Planning as though that decision will always be yours is a gamble worth thinking about. The second reason has nothing to do with health. It has to do with how small a life gets when a job fills the middle of it. Full-time work takes the best 8 or 9 hours of the day. Add the drive there and back. Add the evening you spend recovering from it. What is left goes on the washing, the shopping, and the sleep you owe yourself. So whole parts of a person sit unused for decades. The language never learned. The shed never set up. The coastline never driven end to end. The volunteering that would have given a Tuesday morning some real weight. People often say the first year after work is a shock. The job was a big part of who they were, and that part goes away. What comes next is usually the opposite of empty. Retirees fill their weeks with things that never fitted around a roster. Many say they feel more purpose than they have felt since their 20s. The third reason tends to land the hardest. The people you would share that freedom with are on the same clock you are. Parents in their 80s, friends who have already had one health scare, grandchildren who are 4 now and will be 14 before you finish telling yourself that next year is a better time to slow down. A 65-year-old Australian man has around 20 years of life expectancy left. His parents do not. His mates from school are spread across that same range, and some of them will go earlier than the averages suggest. The trips people talk about taking together need everyone to still be well enough to travel. That window closes without warning. Time with the people who matter is the one thing you cannot top up later with a bigger balance. The fourth reason is where the math starts helping instead of frightening. Most Australians carry a picture of retirement costs that is far higher than what retirees really spend. The Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia sets its comfortable standard at about $55,923 a year for a single person. For a couple, about $78,566. Those figures come from the March quarter of 2026. Those budgets assume you own your home outright and that you want private health cover, a decent car, regular leisure, and a holiday or two. It is a fair guide, and also a lifestyle many people never actually run. Real spending tells a softer story. A landmark study by Milliman tracked the actual bank and card transactions of more than 300,000 Australian retirees. It found that spending peaks early and then falls steadily. The median retired couple spends around 37% less by the time they reach 85 and beyond than they did in their first years of retirement. Travel drops away. Restaurant dinners become lunches. The house is already full of everything it needs. Health costs do climb, though that rise is small next to everything else that falls off the list. Then there is the payment sitting underneath all of it. The full-age pension currently pays $1,200.90 a fortnight for a single person, which works out to about $31,223 a year. For a couple, it pays $1,810.40 a fortnight, or roughly $47,070. Those figures include the pension and energy supplements. From the 20th of September 2026, they rise to $1,237.70 for singles and $1,866 for couples. For a modest standard of living, ASFA says the age pension covers most of the bill on its own. So the real question is smaller than the one most people ask. The gap you need to fill is the space between what you will truly spend and what the pension will truly pay, across the years when your spending is highest. That number is usually well below the balance people think they are chasing. Once you see it clearly, the finish line often turns out to be closer than it looked. The fifth reason is what keeps that gap from swallowing everything. Money that stays invested through retirement behaves very differently from cash sitting in a bank account being drained. Since compulsory super began in July 1992, the median growth fund has returned about 8% a year. Inflation over that same stretch averaged 2.7%. Look at the past 20 years alone, and the story holds. That stretch included the global financial crisis, the pandemic, and the price shock of 2022. Those funds still return 6.9% a year. Chant West puts it plainly with an example. $100 placed in the median balance fund back in 1992 would be worth around $1,099 today. That growth keeps working after you stop. A balance that earns while you draw from it lasts years longer than the same balance sitting still. Australia's tax rules lean in your favour once you get there. Money you take out of a taxed super fund is tax-free from age 60. Move that money into a retirement pension account and the earnings inside it are generally tax-free as well. One rule comes with that pension account. The government sets a minimum you have to withdraw each year, starting at 4% of your balance and rising as you get older. So the money keeps moving into your hands whether you feel ready to spend it or not. So $1 of investment income in retirement is worth more than $1 of wages ever was, because the tax office is no longer taking a share. Put those two ideas together and the picture shifts. You need less than the headline figures suggest, and what you have works harder than it ever did at work. The extra year at the desk is guarding you against a risk that is often much smaller than the one you are ignoring. None of this means walking out tomorrow without a plan. It means running the real numbers instead of the frightening ones. Work out what you actually spend in a year. Subtract what the age pension will chip in at 67. Then look at what your super and savings must cover in between. Check whether you have a way to bridge the years from 60 to 67 because that stretch has to come from your own money. Then have a licensed advisor stress test it since your circumstances are yours alone. The years where you can hike, travel, lift a grandchild and say yes without thinking twice are limited. They are also the years being spent right now. If this gave you something worth acting on, do me a favor and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you there.